And
And
welcome to This Week in Worcester Podcast. I am Tom Marino. I am the editor of This Week in Worcester. This is Mr. John Edward Keogh. He is executive producer of Managing Media. He is president of Hollywood Film Group. I finally remembered. And 92 other things, I think, is an accurate account.
92 other things. I like that. Yeah. What's up, buddy?
What's going on? As we predicted last week, it was an interesting week in the world of city council.
Interesting. I like that word. That makes it sound like it was a nice day.
Yeah, I will unquestionably, for anybody that enjoys me irritated, I will unquestionably be irritated by the end of the show talking about this dumb subject. But first, let's start off with a bit of good news.
Yeah, we can do good news. I like good news. Nice stuff, fun stuff. I'm posting it to all the groups right now, so I'm gonna get.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to pass it off to you so I can do my sharing thing, because I tried to clean up my computer today because I was getting random drop-offs of the internet, and I didn't want that to happen during this here podcast. So, I deleted everything in the world, cookies and whatnot. So now I have to sign into everything, and it's a big giant mess. Nonetheless, this is a Hollywood film, correct?
Oh yeah, Shift. Yeah, it's Hollywood Film,
yes,
Winter Entertainment, Over the Bridge, man. Bunch of the companies all involved.
Well, This Week in Worcester will be releasing tomorrow the exclusive release of the trailer to this film. Tell us about it, Mr. John.
All right, so Shift was the film that we were working on back in September. It's a horror short by young Miss Bridget Cannell of Rutland, Massachusetts, and it's one of the first finished projects. So we released the teaser, and Tom's got it exclusively here for the city of Worcester to go ahead and release that fancy thing. And the movie's going to premiere at the Dead of Winter Horror Festival in February. Isn't that convenient at the horror festival that I'm a part owner of?
That somehow is not surprising.
No, but it was just a really cool project, and it came out. It's come out so good. So I'm just pumped. I'm kind of excited about it. I'm enjoying the press tour thing, and I'm trying to do it the serious way. So that's how the big movies do it. They publish their stuff in their different platforms. You know what I mean? You ever notice that a lot of Warner Brothers things will be premiere with Variety magazine, and then if you look up who owns Variety magazine, you'll be able to figure that out in about 15 seconds. Right now, Variety magazine also does Paramount and Disney and but if you ever see the timing of it, sometimes you can see. And so I think that Worcester has the ability to make movies. Worcester County, Central Massachusetts, super talented people here, and we can do it by hiring local folks. I don't need to necessarily bring in someone from, I don't know, New Mexico to film a movie here in Worcester. And so Shift is just one of those projects. There's a bunch more coming along. Obviously, we had the Dirty German, the feature documentary that came out a few weeks ago, and there's another feature movie coming out later this year, and then there's a Christmas movie coming out around Christmas time. So there's a bunch of stuff happening, and it's super exciting. A lot of hard work went into it, and it's cool to have the results, coming out. So you work hard, and you treat people good. You have a chance to do a lot of awesome stuff.
Excellent. It sounds like you have some exciting stuff going on with in the film world.
Hi, Jeff.
Everybody in Twitterland or in Xland can laugh at me because, or actually no, we should all laugh at Elon Musk because my authenticator app is not or Twitter, which I will call it till the end of time, is not letting me into the This Week in Worcester account, even though I use an authenticator. So that's good. Thanks, Elon.
Oh no, that means that we're not live on Twitter, or we are.
No, we are. It's already connected to this app that we use for this. But was trying to go in and share the thing, and I can't.
So now I can go into X and share it for you.
I am sort of upset,
right?
but I mean, welcome to Elon World. So we'll just suffer, I guess. I mean, it's up there, people can find it, but I usually do a little share gimmick with the topics because for some reason, Twitter doesn't put our description for our for live video in, even though, we have one.
I've seen this company coming to Worcester from Jersey who takes all the opportunities. I don't know who that is. There's actually a couple local catering companies that I've hired a few times, Jess Rubin and then Nancy Jane Framer. Those are the two that I've hired that have done a lot of film, the crafty services. So I didn't know that it was someone from New Jersey. On the big productions that were here, they were Massachusetts companies, but I don't know if you've seen a New Jersey. I don't know which production you've seen the Jersey company on. But yeah, I agree with that. I don't want to bring companies out from outside in, especially catering companies, when we have a bunch of caterers here in Worcester. That's exactly the idea, is that we should use local people. I've seen these trucks downtown and on the highway. I don't know which trucks those are.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for joining us. Thank you also, Mr. John Edward Keogh, for your update on the Shift film, which again, catch the preview tomorrow on This Week in Worcester. Okay, elephant in the room. Yeah, I mean, I try to start off with something somewhat positive, just so everyone knows our internal list. This item is actually listed as obviously Tuesday. So this Tuesday, as we predicted last week, I don't know, is dumpster fire too strong?
I mean, well, so I don't want to. I mean, I would say that from my perspective about the people that were protesting, I thought that they were very, very well organized.
Very.
I thought
on message.
There was a bunch of people in the crowd with yellow, marshal outfits that were very calm, and when people were getting emotional, they were kind of wandering around and they were touching people. I saw that they were speaking with them in a calm voice. There was really just 4 people that I saw, and they came in together that were very disruptive as far as the crowd goes, and they were counter protesters, and they were the 4 that were aggressive, were swearing, and were causing any kind of disturbance. I didn't see, and I have to, I don't want to start taking shots right away, but I read Marco Cortolano's article, and he said that he saw both sides, being aggressive towards each other, and I don't know where he saw that. I don't know what group he was with that was doing that. I was only a few feet from him, so again, and I also the Guardian's article created this complete nonsensical narrative, but we'll get into the details of how the council meeting went down. But I mean, there was a bunch of stuff that came out afterwards that just completely mischaracterized what happened. And so I want to say this, from my perspective, and I am not, I guess I don't want to, I'm not against what they were saying, because what they're saying was that they're anti-murder. And, but all I've seen since really is disinformation from city councilors, from the mayor's office. I just disagree with the characterization. But the Telegram, Gazette, and the Guardian, Marco's a good reporter. I don't want to ever say anything bad about him because he's a hardworking kid, and I really like him personally. But that article was not accurate. And then the Guardian one was just, I don't know what they were writing, but it seems like they were writing articles to frame what happened that night, like in this way, calling it a riot. A couple people used the word riot. There was no riot. A riot,
no riot.
There was no riot at all. Now, were the emotions high? Absolutely. Sure. And that's the thing I think that we've talked about before, Tom. this city administration and the city council has a very difficult time with emotion. And so if someone's upset, they assume that means that they hate them or they want to hurt them or something like that. And the thing is that being in government, being in public life in any kind, you need to learn how to deal with someone who's emotional and is dealing with some things. And in this case, there was actually family members of people who have died in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, including one particular young lady who apparently her father was killed, like not far from where she was. Like she saw it, and tremendously emotional story and like really difficult to hear. But she, if anybody, has a right to be very upset about this issue that we, as Americans, we like sit back and we don't want to have anything to do with it. This is very personal to her, and so to be honest with you, her in particular, if she didn't karate kick everybody, that would have been like a champion. You know what I mean? Like her level of emotion, in my opinion, dealing with that kind of pressure and that kind of trauma, if she went and started beating everybody up, I would be like, okay, that's kind of normal, because if you just went through that trauma, and of course the trauma has happened in this last year, so we know that. I don't know the exact date when that happened for her, but it's happened this year, so much so that she came over here. Like she's newly immigrated to the United States, so that's like really like traumatic, folks. Like how do you not see these things and give them room to be emotional and to go through the processing thing? It's funny, we want to get upset, and Tom and I get a chance to come on here and talk things out, but Tom's my friend, so if he gets mad or I get mad, we can absorb it from each other, right? But then the city council doesn't want to hear people upset, so real sensitive responses by several of the city councilors. And then the last thing is I do want to say that I saw the way that when the crowd was moving like into the room, like when they finally opened the doors, they opened the doors late. When the people started moving in there, I mean, that was when, like, I guess the most tension could have taken place. You know what I mean? Because when there's people moving, 200-300 people in a very small space moving. But so everybody filed in, and then when they realized they ran out of seats, they came back out and went upstairs, or they stayed in the hallway. I didn't see anybody screaming or yelling. Again, I saw one person. This was a man who had an American flag and an Israeli flag draped across his body, who was the only person who was causing any trouble. He was actually intentionally bumping Manny, and he kept putting his sign in front of Manny's camera. And I thought Manny handled that very well, because if a dude's bumping into you on purpose, it was unnecessary. So in that particular case, Manny called me over. I spoke with Matt Early, the captain from the Worcester Police that was there, and that guy was asked to leave. And he was the only person I saw that was asked to leave until the council meetings began, which of course we'll get to that when we start talking about how the council meeting itself went down. But again, not one of the folks that were there for the ceasefire. And again, there's another last thing, Tom, and then I know you have a bunch of points you're going to make, but the one thing I want to say this: not everybody who was a part of the ceasefire is anti-Israeli, which is what has been framed this entire week. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was multiple rabbis there who were with the ceasefire group. There was multiple groups of Jewish folks that were there, including one. I'm not sure the term for this, but the lady who was singing, she was leading she was an Israeli citizen who has moved to Worcester years ago and is like a known singer. And so I spoke with her for a little bit. Again, not a Palestinian, not someone who is of Hamas, who served in the IDF as a teenager. Like, this is not someone that you would necessarily consider. And Tom's going to break down what the actual petition called for, which people have completely misrepresented in the public, like just blatant open lies, including some fools on Tom's posts on Facebook. I engaged with one guy who apparently just wants murder. He's just pro-murder, that guy. But again, disinformation does happen on a regular basis, and I'm glad that we were actually there to see it, and now we can hold some of our local officials who have just blatantly lied all week long about what actually happened, because we were there to see it and we're there to report on it. I'm glad we recorded it. I feel bad for the cable folks who were ordered to put the camera up so they couldn't continue the broadcast. That was interesting, but I'm glad that other folks were there to cover it live.
So the camera thing is pretty typical when any public meeting goes into recess like that. They usually won't be showing the floor. Congress is, federal Congress is an exception. I think they usually keep it on the floor because there's really nowhere to go. So this petition sought a resolution for call for a ceasefire in Gaza, mutual swap of detainees and hostages. So explicitly called for the release of hostages, and for the United States to follow its laws. And it named a series of laws, which are mostly about arms exports.
Yeah.
Mostly U.S. law very explicitly prohibits exporting of munitions or arms to any nation that is violating human rights or international law. And it's just the fact that although the State Department officially claims that hasn't happened, we now know through good reporting at ProPublica, I believe, I forget, I'm not sure. I think it was ProPublica though, that agencies within the State Department, their reports to the Secretary, it laid out a strong case that human rights have been committed and war crimes have been committed, and that it more than meets the bar for prohibiting future arms sales. And that was overruled by the Secretary. So you can do what you want with that.
Anthony Blinken, right? Yeah. So,
and he also was very specifically asked in front of in a congressional hearing. They're under oath, novel concept, and was asked if any of our interagencies, agencies within the State Department, had found. He was basically asked, does anybody in the American government say that this is happening? And he said no. And that was well after he had received these reports that said explicitly yes. So, that is what it is. That's, the federal government doing what it does. But that's what this petition asks for, is a ceasefire.
One of those laws, Tommy, if we sell munitions to any country, right, and they're used the first time to target I think the law reads a specific civilian installation, right? I think it's something like that. We could go into the law and look at that thing. After that, all shipments of munitions, even if they're already paid for, are supposed to stop. And then the State Department is supposed to investigate that and see and find out. And in this case, the Secretary of State has this ability to waive that, right? And not do it. And so the nation. No, he can't. He can't do it. So why aren't those inspections happening? Is what I guess would be my question.
Reporting again. I'm pretty sure it was ProPublica. Not that the publication that reported this would be watching, but apologies to them if I got it wrong. But it was USAID was a State Department agency, and that was one of, I think, two. That very specifically said in their report, there's not much to talk about here. It's pretty clear what's going on. Specifically, I think that was specifically related to its Israel's control of aid going into Gaza and there. Yeah. So nonetheless, we want to keep it. Worcester was just trying to give a little background there. Yeah. So that's what this petition asked for. Asked for the City Council to for a resolution for a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire, mutual swapping of detainees and hostages, and for the United States to follow its own laws. Now, a lot of people have said this is well outside of City Council's kind of realm of responsibility. Facts, absolute facts, and I would support the council taking up things that are within its responsibilities, quite frankly, and only those things, and have been for a long time.
Yeah.
While I appreciate the sentiment of an order they took up in 2022 about nuclear proliferation, probably shouldn't have been something they voted on, but they did, and that's an important point. But they did. A year ago, October 17th to be precise, of 2023, they voted on condemning the attacks and calling for the release of hostages, of American hostages at least, using some colorful language as well inside in the resolution, and that was sponsored by 6 councilors. Not only did they vote on it, it was, they all signed on to it. 6 of them signed on to it,
and they also spent almost an entire meeting speaking about it, and they condemned 2 of the councilors for not agreeing in detail with the words, and then said that they were supporters of the other organizations because they didn't want to support the resolution that was proposed by those councilors.
Right, and there was also some suggestions on changing that resolution to something about peace or some sort of not just acknowledging one side, not of the conflict, as I'm sure you've heard. The final count for victims of last October 7th in Israel was 1,129, of which about 300 of them were military people. And by the time the city council voted on this petition last October 17th, the casualties in Gaza had already exceeded those in Israel.
And real quick point, because there's people that have responded to some things that you said by saying that the Gaza, the Ministry of Health in Gaza, which some of these numbers are regularly reported, but that number that Tom is talking about is literally the IDF's own published number. Their count of the casualties, the Israeli Defense Force, their number, right, their published number exceeded that number 10 days later. That's the official Israeli account, not to say that the Gaza Ministry is telling not to. I don't know. I can't tell you that, but I just want to say Israel publishes numbers every week, and you can actually go look at that. You can go on their website, and they tell their own casualty story, which is still in the tens of thousands.
So it's interesting that people often claim that the numbers coming out of Gaza, which is basically, the Gaza Ministry of Health it's basically Hamas run. I mean, it's Hamas ran the place until this war. So there's 2 things there. They've generally been accurate in the past. Once hostilities cease and they actually go and count the dead, they've generally been accurate. Not precisely to the person, of course, there's chaos, but they've generally been fairly accurate. And 2, despite some Israeli officials saying, "Oh, it's nonsense," when the government actually speaks officially, they generally accept those numbers.
Yeah, they literally publish them on their website, right. And they're very efficient with those publications. Those are regular, and not only that, there's a person, and I don't know his name. I don't want to say his name wrong, but there's a minister that is one of Netanyahu's cabinet members, whose job it is to do official casualty counts for both Israel and the Palestinians. They have a person who has a ministry that's their job to do it, and those numbers are generally being confirmed by them. So the reason I bring that up is because often when you say this in the local area here in Worcester, particularly on Facebook, you will be accused immediately of being a supporter of whoever,
because people don't know what they're talking about.
And it's just, I mean, again, they're not reporters. You and I are both journalists, and we try to be accurate with our numbers and try.
I mean, I spent years studying this issue long before I was in journalism.
So, anyways, in general, the numbers stand to be true, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, so the reality is that I think we're usually hearing about 42 or 45. There was a study a few months ago that was published by The Lancet, a well-respected journal, and it's I think it's American-based or it's British-based. I'm not sure. but they used a methodology that has been used in the past and is, nobody says it's perfect by any means, but it's not very controversial to use this method. And that paper predicted that when we're all said and done here and we dig everybody out of the rubble, because there are lots and lots of people on the rubble, that we're probably talking, they said, 150 to 180, I think was their paper, 150 to 180,000. So, the numbers that we're talking about here aren't close, because there's no ability to move any rubble to find dead bodies, because you'll get bombed.
And if you do go in there to try to look at it, the Israel's not going to let you look. So it just and by the way, saying that again doesn't make me anti-Israel. It's a statement of fact, because it's actually their official policy. So it's like it's a actual position that they've taken. That is real in real time, that you can go and look up, and you can see them say that we're not going to let you in. You can't go look through the rubble. That's just their policy.
Yeah. So, and one of the many criticisms that's often lobbied about when you cite casualty numbers too is, well, that's Hamas numbers, one, and then two, they don't differentiate between combatants. But yet, just from news reports or whatever, how many casualties were there? Everybody says 1,200, because that's the number that's in the news. No, it was actually 1,129 and 300, and some of them were military people. So Israel doesn't differentiate either.
Generally, when someone does, and I don't know why there's a different, is it because you're a soldier that you're expected to be more likely to die, or you need to be, we reduce their value because they're a soldier? I don't understand.
No, so when you're talking about, quote, rules of war, international law, you're supposed to take, this is a complex issue, but it's, in short, and I don't mean to be all inclusive. So if you nitpick the answer, I just don't want to go through a whole thing here. But you're generally supposed to kill people that are armed and try to not kill people that aren't, right? So if you're talking about rules of war, if you're in the military and you're an active combatant, then you're a legitimate military target, right?
And the conversations that we're having here in Worcester are about asking them not to kill anybody. Right, we're not, the conversation, the argument in reverse is that that's somehow bad, that asking to not kill people is bad, is what I've learned since Tuesday, is if you say you don't want people to die, you're bad.
If you think if you think enough is enough, if you think they've killed 2 Hamas leaders in a row now, they say they've killed about 15,000. I haven't heard them give a number in a while, the Israelis, but Israelis claim they've killed 15,000 Hamas members, or so, 17,000, 15 to 17,000, I think was the last number I heard, at least. And they only ever claimed there was 35 to 40. So you've wiped out half their force. You've killed 2 of their leaders on the ground. When is enough enough? And of course the Israeli position is, well, when Hamas is eliminated, that's not a thing that's going to happen. Okay,
right?
It's not a thing.
Yeah, so realistically, you'd have to eradicate people, which is exactly what that a couple people said on your post during this week, is that they wanted them to be slaughtered, and that's really where I disconnect from. I understand there's a nuance between the two situations, right? I get it, and that's something to be discussed. But I also want to say that I think that there is another position to take, which is just to be for life, and that means all life, even if you don't agree with that life or you think that life is bad. And I can't see how killing people doesn't lead eventually to more killing, because you're creating in the killing of these other folks, people that are grieving and traumatized and dealing with it. And sometimes the response in traumatized people is violence. And so, if there's a teenage boy or girl who witnesses, the death of their family, brothers and sisters, and then they grow up to be someone who then goes and does it, it's not a justification of it, but it's an understanding that would be not an abnormal response, considering the abnormality of their situation, right? So their situation is so traumatic that then a traumatic response makes sense. It's logical in many ways.
So there's um, the hospital situation currently in Gaza. Basically, they've all been attacked under the guise of there's fighters there. They're using the hospital as a military operation, as a military base, and therefore the hospital then becomes military base, not a hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a legal argument that they're making. But I mean, there was a point. I don't know what the situation is currently, but there was a point earlier in the war where medical supplies were just not going in,
Right.
and amputations were happening without anesthesia. And if your sibling is in the operating room and you're standing outside listening to them scream because there's no anesthesia to give them, I think that your likelihood to pick up a weapon in the future probably just increased.
Yeah, I mean, I get mad when someone cuts me off in traffic, and sometimes to the point where I want to get out of my car and fight them for that. And so then, if you're adding to that, significant and serious trauma to the point of death, where the person that I love and care about is dead, I think it's very likely. In fact, maybe those folks are much more patient than I am, because again, like I said, sometimes in traffic I get so upset I want to fight. So does that mean I'm what would happen to me in those situations over there? I probably would do the same thing, on both sides, recognizing
Yeah.
that both sides have suffered serious trauma.
Yep. And to like kind of cap off, because we talked about this before.
Yeah.
I did a whole podcast with somebody else about this. I don't want to drag on about this too long, but it's I think there is some religious affiliations that aren't Jewish folks, even Christian folks. They have this reverence for Israel. The psychotic, the very fringe of evangelicals, think that the Jews are all going to convert once and then he's going to come back. So there's some weird ideological stuff going on that is largely fringe, related to especially evangelicals. But I think a good portion of it is you see Israel and you see a lot of white people, because many of those people are European, right? And while they're not, there is you can be an ethnic Jew, for example. So that that's calling Jews white people is a little weird to me, at least. But I think that a lot of Israelis present as white. Netanyahu presents as white, right? People look at him and go, "White dude." I think there's that. That plays a piece of it. And I mean, look, if you if you even want to look at this situation objectively, yeah, Hamas, bad people, do terrible things, horrible, horrific things. Not all the things that they're accused of, but they do terrible, horrific things. And then you can look at the people in the Israeli cabinet, and you find a convicted terrorist and a genocidal maniac. Literally a person who said, "We could kill them all, and it would be moral, but the world won't let us," end quote. So, I always tell people there's no moral high ground here. There isn't. There's not. And if you think the world started on October 7th, you're just an idiot. You're just an idiot. You're like, this is the first thing that ever happened in this conflict. It's been going on since, I mean, you could argue, 1898 was Theodore Herzl's book that really defined what Zionism is. So most people don't know what they're talking about. However, these people weren't bringing any of that into this. They just wanted to say, how about we seek people to stop dying? People give hostages back and detainees back from the war, and ask our country to follow its own law, and that would probably lead to a better outcome than all of this horrificness.
And I thought that there was an older gentleman that was handing out these stickers, who was not Palestinian, and he was not Jewish. He was an older pastor. I'm pretty sure he's from an Episcopalian church in Auburn, and he was handing out stickers that said, "Each life is a universe," right? It had a little rose on there, and and he was in several conversations that I saw him have. He was arguing for the sanctity of life in general, and to me, that person, that guy, is the representation of that multi-faith situation that they felt the need to be heard. So they weren't necessarily asking for the counselors to agree with them.
Nope.
Right. So that's another part. I think that people think like there was some movement to like force some of our city councilors to have to accept this and to agree with it. No, but they just wanted to be heard on that specific thing. Like, hey, we want peace. We want to express that peace, and we're asking our elected representatives to hear us out on expressing this thing, which again has no legal standing. It has no. It wouldn't affect anybody if you said yes or no.
So that's not necessarily true. Especially our federal delegation, we do have a federal representative that's troubled by what's happened over the last year on both sides, and I think that the strategy could be, don't want to speak for the organizers here, but I mean, it would make some sense that, putting together a bunch of places within his district that is saying, we want this. And then he can credibly say, this is what my constituents are actually asking for through their local governments. So I don't think it's totally, but I mean, no, is because Worcester takes this action, is that going to change the outcome or change the path of the war? No. But it's not totally irrelevant either. Right. And 10 cities or 10 different municipalities in Massachusetts have, that I found at least, have passed something similar to this. It was virtually the same language in most of them. Right. 2 have rejected it, and in those 2, as far as I could tell, I wasn't there. I was reading news reports trying to look at this contemporaneously. They didn't turn into dumpster fires.
Right.
I mean, there was people upset and they said things, but I mean, it wasn't, we're going to shut down your meeting.
Right.
And that's what happened on Tuesday. Those folks submitted their petition a week early. They didn't get a rejection until after the deadline to submit petitions. So they couldn't wasn't like they could adjust it. They could have, how do we make this right so we can get it on the agenda? Because the deadline had already passed.
Right.
And then contrary to what some counselors say on Twitter, misrepresenting the truth, the facts are, you would think that this person would know, since they voted on it, that there was a motion to suspend the rules to allow these people to speak. The couple hundred people that showed up, and that vote was defeated 5-6.
That's right. And the Guardian repeated that at the end of their article. Again, I'm just trying to call on the Guardian and the Telegram to just accurately report on what happened. But the city clerk Nico Vangeli, he said in response to what was taking place that folks could petition for a suspension of the rules in 2 weeks. Right? He had said pushing it forward to this Tuesday, and then Councillor Tu Nguyen said, well, why not just make that motion now, and made a motion. As is the right of a counselor to make a motion to suspend the rules. The mayor allowed the vote on that motion, and then that motion failed. So there was now there was this idea that it was offered to the group by the city clerk, and then the group said no, but that is not what happened.
That's not what happened. So that is a lie, is what it is.
I was in the room, and there were several people that were, I guess, you could see that they were in the leadership group of the event. But there was actually, that's the other thing too. People kind of have presented that this 200 to 300 person group was like one cohesive unit, and they were all in lockstep, and that is not true at all. There's multiple different coalitions that were there that represented different positions slightly. There was some nuance there. If you study it and you understand it, you'll know that there's different groups. But the Worcester Interfaith Alliance, for example, was not approached by the city clerk and offered the opportunity to speak 2 weeks later. That didn't take place. He said it from his position, on the dais, right? So he said it there. into the microphone. It was repeated out there. So it wasn't an offer that was made out towards the group, some kind of thing. And I'm not doing this to criticize Nico. I'm just saying what actually took place was he mentioned it from where his position, and then Councilor Nguyen responded with a motion to suspend the rules at that time. So on
which
the
they do every meeting. At the end of the meeting, everybody can offer orders under suspension. They to comply with the open meeting law, they have to be on the agenda the following week. Right. Yep. But there was, the council could not have voted on this, but they could have allowed these people that showed up to speak, since, they allowed council to become a facility of trafficking and overt racism the week before and bigotry. Right. It was actually a good meeting in the end, right? Like it was besides these despicable people that came proposing this, everybody else was pretty much in universal agreement. Some councilors spoke favorably about other councilors, then that usually doesn't happen in some of these instances, right?
It was an 11-0 vote.
Yeah, I mean, after that, and it ended up being, although it was a stupid situation, it ended up being a pretty good day. Yeah. And then a week later, they could come back and, Nico sent these folks that petitioned an email that said that on October 15th, the week before, apparently after the meeting, that councilors asked him to much more strictly interpret and apply the rule. So what that means is they changed the meaning of the rule when they didn't change the words. And here we are. And it's also important to note that every single one of them knew this was coming and have known for a long time, because this group was reaching out to councilors, trying to meet with them and talk to them about it. Yeah. So this wasn't a surprise. This wasn't it wasn't a happy accident. The suggestion that it just happened, that this happened a week before this other stupid petition, and it just they just happened to decide, it's nonsense. They don't want to vote on it.
They don't.
And tough.
So I want to point out something else too. So when the initial representative, the young lady, stepped to the microphone, she wanted to speak about item 9M, which was on the agenda. Okay. And then someone from the crowd, a particular lady who was waving a Israeli flag, screamed out within 2 feet of me. And if you go and watch Manny J Media, you can hear her voice clear as a bell. She screamed, "It's not on the agenda," at the top of her lungs. And then the mayor responded to her voice. Problem is the young lady who was speaking about David Webb's item 9M, which was about the law department application of these rules and their understanding of it. Yep. So my contention is this, and maybe people don't agree with me, is that she was bringing up the context of her wanting the item to be on the agenda. Now, maybe people don't want to hear her background, because she did talk about her personal background story. But let me speak about myself, in that when I had my petition earlier this year related to the cable thing denied, I went to City Council and I spoke on one of the 7s, not one of the 9s or the 10s, but one of the 7s. The 7s are these normal items that kind of just get roll call votes and automatically go through. But one of them was a cable junction box, that's Spectrum there. And I spoke on that item specifically. And the mayor very graciously back then in May allowed me to speak, probably way past the 2 minutes if you go back and look at it. And then Steve Quist, he spoke right before me, actually, and he also spoke for a significant period of time. So despite the fact that what we were speaking about, the cable junction box activation, right, was the item on the agenda, we were speaking about Spectrum's cable license, which was a much broader topic than the specific item. And the mayor gave us the grace. In this case, I believe this young lady was doing the same thing, but the mayor made the decision to deny her that opportunity. And here's where I, as a Irish guy, have to cede to Manny's understanding. And Manny said this very clearly. This is why folks of color don't want to vote or don't want to participate, because they feel silenced. And in this case, that's exactly what took place. Whether you agree with that or not doesn't really matter. We have an actual example, a real life example that happened this year. And the week before, as Tom very clearly pointed out, 6 people from the local Republican City Committee were allowed to get up and actually ask for an unconstitutional change to our charter, creating a 2-tiered system of citizenship verification, which has been consistently and regularly denied by the Supreme Court and every single state court across the country, basically since the Civil War, but even before that. There's no such thing as a 2-tiered citizenship test. But yet, they were allowed to speak, each of them first, including Pam Oliver, the person who was the petitioner herself, for more than her 3-minute allotment, because normally the petitioner gets an additional minute.
Yep.
So it does look unfair. In fact, it is unfair. It's not even an opinion or fact. The fact is that in this case, the rule was applied unfairly, and pretty convenient that the new interpretation of the rule, as Tom pointed out, just happened to come this week. We need you to really buckle down on the rules after the white people have spoken. Like, they got their time, but we want to make sure that the next group, we don't want to hear from them.
Exactly what I said on, for anybody that gets up early in the morning, I do a weekly spot on Hank Stoltz show, Talk of the Commonwealth, with Mark Henderson every Wednesday at 8 a.m. And I'll say the same thing here I said there. By virtue of what I do, this journalism bit, I've gotten to know several of the councilors. I've at least met them all, know some, better than others. I wouldn't say friends, but friendly with some. And that crosses the kind of ideological divide. Councilor Merrick is one of my favorite people. I think she's one of the most hysterical people alive. I frequently joke with Councilor Bergman that someday we'll find something that we agree on, because we don't agree on much. He's a good guy, and he listens. And you can say that about if you want to go the wildly to the other side of the spectrum. I mean, I think Atel Hijiai is a incredibly principled and strong woman who fights for what she thinks is right. Okay. And so, I don't do not talking to people because of their politics.
That makes no sense.
No, it's dumb. So I don't think that these people, I like and respect them. I don't think that they're bigots, but anybody who thinks that this looks bigoted, I really can't blame you. I cannot blame you. As soon as once a girl in a hijab stepped to the mic, you suddenly had no more time for this, and that's the optics you chose.
It's tough. I mean, what are you going to say? And again, there was this. I don't want to say it was like a concerted, staged effort, but the week before, there were 6 folks from the local Republican City Committee that were sitting in chairs right near the front of the thing, and they got there really early. It was very interesting how early they got there, and they were very much at the beginning of the line, first in line, first to speak, and that really struck me as like planned. And so then the opportunity was going to be given to them. They were going to get the opportunity. They were told to be there early, to be there on time. And then in this case, the doors didn't get open until 6:20. And there was a concerted effort to respond and to deny these folks the opportunity. There was a lot of conversations, a lot of, I don't know if quorum was being met, but there was a lot of like off the record, counselors talking to a lot of counselors, in hallways and in other rooms. And so I can't say for sure because I wasn't in the rooms. I don't know. But I mean, there seemed to be a lot of concerted effort related to this particular thing. And I know that I personally, I got dragged into this because I was accused of handing out people's phone numbers to whoever was making these vile text messages to Counselor Toomey. Again, one, I don't have Counselor Toomey's cell phone number, so I would just want to get that out there. And anybody who's made this accusation against me, I challenge you straight up. I have my phone, and I will meet you, and you can look through my phone, and you can tell me if I have Kate Toomey's cell phone number. I do have Katie Toomey, the Register of Deeds. I have her phone number, but I do not have Kate Toomey's cell phone number. I have spoken with her on the phone many times in relation to journalistic efforts, but she always spoke to me from City Hall. So I've never had that number. I don't know what a number is, and I don't want her number, especially not now, because I don't want to be accused of anything like this. But I didn't have anything to do with that. And I on Tom's show, I repudiate anybody who sent those messages.
Disgusting.
I was in the room when the messages were being relayed.
Yep.
And was standing next to Manny apparently when it was happening. So if you really wanted to, you could go back and see me on camera, not using my phone, but I was dealing with a dude dressed in an American flag who was jostling Manny. So apparently at the same time as this was going. So,
but it was the people that brought the petition that were disruptive and violent. Remember that?
Yeah, the people who brought the petition, they were the ones who were. And I will say this. I have a long-standing relationship with Mayor Petty, and I consider him family. Like straight up, he's a relative of mine in my mind and in my eyes, and I know that he feels the same way about me. But when he went on the radio and said that this was that group was full of hate, I have to stand against the mayor and say that is completely false. They were there to ask for the loss of life to stop, and I think that Councilor Russell called it a riot. Councilor Bergman used the word riot. There was no riot. You guys obviously
no riot.
You've never been in a riot, if that's what you think a riot was.
Facts.
Emotional people that were dealing with being denied the opportunity to speak. And I get it. Being the protested person is way different than being the protester. So I get that you would feel, when people are chanting shame at you, I can feel that. But
you should be ashamed because you acted reprehensibly.
Yeah, and it's hard to take it in that moment. I get it. But the some of the drama of asking for police escorts and all this other nonsense that was going on.
Yeah, listen. So I wasn't actually in the room. I was in the hallway.
Yeah.
Right. Because I just wanted to let all the people that were going to speak in and whatever. I don't want to say his name because I don't know that he wants his name said. But it's certainly a local activist on Israeli issues. Fairly public person that proclaims themselves a Zionist. Okay. I talked to that person. When I got off the elevator, it was like the first person I saw. I happen to know this person.
You talked to him for like a solid 25, 30 minutes.
I get along with the guy.
Yeah,
we have vastly different beliefs on how the Middle East should behave, but I get along with the guy.
Yeah.
I talked to him for a good, maybe 10 minutes when I first got there, and then I talked to him again before I left. And I think one person said hello to him. The only thing that one person said hey, just like hey, his name, and another person, while we were talking, we kind of both moved to make way for the group of people that was doing their protest thing. And somebody said, "Sucks being displaced, doesn't it?" With a little kind of a grin on their face, right? And he didn't say anything back. He just gave him a wave. Hey, how you doing? But nobody bothered him. That was the only thing I heard someone say to him. And when I talked to him at the end, he didn't mention that he had any problems. He was still standing there. I would be surprised if he didn't have any problems because he didn't mention it to me.
Yeah, he didn't. Again, I appreciate that you're not. Again, we're trying not to bring people's names up without them being here to defend themselves. But again, I agree with you. I saw the same thing. I saw one person. There was one guy. I don't know his name, but he was draped in an American flag, and he was carrying an Israeli flag, and he was carrying a sign. And the sign said "Eradicate Hamas." That's what the sign said. So that's where he was at, and he he got in a couple arguments on the outskirts of the group, and then when the people started moving, he was jostling a little bit with them. He was spoken to by the police, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times before the doors opened, and then again, he decided to plant himself right in front of Manny, and then at first Manny just raised the camera up on the tripod to just go higher than him and just give the guy room, and actually was taking the the kind of close space, which is not necessarily something that Manny likes to do. But then the guy kept in, I watched him do it on at least 3 occasions. He backed into Manny with no one around, and like was going like this with his shoulder, and then started putting the sign like this and following it around, which you can see on camera, by the way. Again, these aren't things that I'm making up or I'm exaggerating. You can actually go and watch it on our platform, go look for it, and you'll see the guy trying to cover Manny's camera with his sign. And again, he was eventually a police officer witnessed this and asked him to leave. That was not one of the folks that were there to, protest for the ceasefire. That was someone who was a counter protester that was calling for the eradication of Hamas, who was the person who was causing trouble. I don't want to speak for everybody, but there's 3 other people with him that were all kind of grouped together, and they were very aggressive, and they were very screamy. They were using profanity on a regular basis. Again, that was my experience, and I want to point out that
there was one woman who couldn't have been 5 feet tall, with an Israeli flag, and I didn't see this person you're talking about at all. Maybe I got a car accident on the way, actually, so I was later than I had wished to be, so maybe I missed all that. But this woman, I mean, again, she couldn't have been 5 feet tall. It's a very small person in stature, and was, when they were doing, they were kind of huddled together, the folks there that had come in support of the petition and went, chanting and singing or whatever. And, this person was trying to push themselves into the middle of their circle while calling everyone terrorists.
Yeah. And so, I mean, again, you come to a protest, and by the way, I'm for counter protests. Go ahead. But if you come in an aggressive way, and you receive, if you go up into somebody's face and you start dropping F-bombs at them, and then they respond with an F-bomb, and you say, hey, look, I don't have any sympathy for you. I really don't. And I just don't, because you came in an aggressive way. But I will say this. I know that there's some sarcastic exchanges, but I think for the most part, no one really did that. This one, like I said, very small group was doing that. And so, I want to I will say this. I did witness maybe one of the more hilarious exchanges I think I've ever seen in my life, between Councilor Bergman and local, guy, David Webb. You can go check this out on one of his things, if you really want to see it, but I thought it was really funny. And basically, he asked to speak with Mo, and Mo said, I'll speak to you when you are elected, God forbid. And I thought that was hilarious. Because basically, Mo is saying to David he will not speak to him unless he's elected. It was mind-boggling. And Councilor Bergman now was getting the brunt of a lot of stuff there, and was taking it on the chin. So I do, understand he was probably stressed out in that moment. But that was actually I thought, somewhat lighthearted exchange. Again, in a tense situation. So
and I was sitting by the time councilors walked out of the hall of the chamber. I was sitting on a bench almost to the other end of the hall, so I had a really good view of them walking out, right? Because it's it's on that side, looking dead at them. It didn't appear to me, and I was a bit away, but I didn't see anybody. It didn't appear that anybody was even saying anything to them, nor did any of them even turn toward the crowd like somebody had addressed them. They were still doing the same chant they had done all night. Yeah. And so that they were escorted out by police officers, I mean...
Again, so I mean, I think that's the thing, Tom. People have a really hard time dealing with emotional responses, and so in that moment, they were feeling the emotion, and they were feeling under duress, I guess, because they were being given emotional response. And I just think that's something that you should have to learn to deal with if you're going to take a public position. If you take a public position and you run for something and you get elected, know that there's going to be someone. By the way, I don't know who we would consider the most the best politician ever in America. I don't know who that would be. I don't know who would, the one that everybody can agree upon. I don't know who that is, right? Because
Oh, there isn't one.
I don't know. Maybe Lincoln. Everybody likes Lincoln, right? For the most part, maybe that's who it is. And he was assassinated. So, I mean,
Lincoln,
like,
but anyway.
huh?
I said everybody does not like Lincoln, but anyway.
Right. No, I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to figure out who would be the one that has like the most likes. And I would just want to point out that Lincoln, who I think a lot of folks do like in general in history, he was assassinated by someone who didn't like him. So it's like when you get to that position, that's not funny. I'm not laughing, but I'm just it's really hard to be a public official ever and not have somebody want to take you down. And to bring it back around to the religious point, Jesus, he came to you preach, peace, whatever you want to say. If you don't, whether you agree with who Jesus is, I have one opinion, and maybe you have a different opinion. Historically speaking, and there's public records of this outside of the Bible, he was crucified, and so a guy who is known as either one thing or the other, but is generally his message that he was known for was peace, was ended up sentenced to death for that message. So the counselors maybe should have a thicker skin, in my opinion, here.
Yep.
And now, if there's actual threats being delivered to people and people's personal phone numbers being like
stupid and unhelpful.
Yeah, that's stupid. And whoever you are, if you're out there and you think that you were doing something good by sending 75 shames to somebody, you're an idiot. I don't know how else to look at you other than saying you don't help and you didn't convince.
I haven't. But to this point though, there was 4 separate text messages that Consul Toomey posted. They all came from the same number.
It's one person. Yeah.
And that number is registered to a nursing home in not Rosendale, in Dorchester. So it was obviously a clone number, right? It didn't come from. It's a landline, right? So it didn't come from a landline. So we have absolutely no idea who that person is.
And so the person is a coward for doing that, for using that like sneaky, however they bounced it off, a WhatsApp or a Google number or however it is.
Right. They do that. And I am absolutely not suggesting that Consul Toomey arranged for us, sent these text messages to herself. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying could have been anybody.
Yeah. No, I legitimately believe that it was somebody probably thinking that doing that would somehow make Kate feel guilty or whatever, I guess, but I don't know.
No, it's stupid. It's either the dumbest person in the world, or maybe they sent them to create a different effect. We do not know and probably won't ever know.
Right, because they'll never come forward, because that's what people like that do. They just do cowardly acts and then hide behind their keyboard or their cell phone, and so they're useless. You don't help forward the public conversation in any way, shape, or form. Including, by the way, the guy that I ended up interacting with on Tom's post. I'm not even going to say his name because I don't want to give him credit for it. But the guy who called for slaughter, that's pro-murder and just wants to eliminate people, that guy's an idiot too. So there's no reason to even engage. At that point,
my favorite though. My favorite though is when you point out to people, and some people that are very supportive of the local Republican Party. I saw this online as well, through the interwebs as well. When you tell them, when they say, "Oh, it's just a bunch of anti-Semites," and you say there was Jewish groups involved, they either
literally rabbis.
They just laugh at your post, or they say something stupid. Is there something more anti-Semitic than a Christian telling a Jew they're not a Jew?
Yeah, I know there's a lot of that. Not only that, but just taking these positions that really that run counter to what the Jewish faith represents. And I want to say this, and I know we've gone around a lot, but there's this Jewish proverb which is in probably one of the most famous movies of all time. But saving, oh my goodness,
you try to say Saving Private Ryan.
No, not Saving Private Ryan, but the guy who saved all the folks, he smuggled them out. The rich guy. Schindler's List. Oh my goodness. Took a minute to get there. But there's a proverb in that movie, which is a real proverb, which is this concept of save one life, save the world entire. I'm not going to say it in Hebrew because I'm going to mangle it, but it's from the Talmud, and it's this idea of the sanctity of life. So if you try to save one life, you're saving the whole world. And then Oskar Schindler, who was a Nazi, right? So like he wasn't not a Nazi. He was a Nazi. By the way, he was a Nazi in charge of a concentration camp, and a ghetto which enslaved the Jewish people. He has a tree in Israel that was planted in his name, which is one of their highest honors that they give, a tree planted in Israel. And it's inscribed with that saying, save one life, you save the world entire. So this man who did really not great things in the earlier part of his life, he overcame that with saving some people. He smuggled a bunch of people out of Germany and saved them from the Holocaust. And Israel, makes him a hero. He's a hero of the nation. And and he gets the title, which was called Friend of Israel. And to me, this is how I understood growing up what Israel was all about, right? That concept, saving life, saving folks, and so that's what I stand for. I don't know what else other people want to stand for, but I don't know how you can say that you're for life if you're not for life, right? Just every single person is precious, even if they're not the greatest person on earth.
And it's it annoys, it troubles me when people claim that it's the terrorism that bothers them. No, it's not. It's your team being killed. People on your team and not the other team being killed is what bothers you. You don't care about terrorism. You like terrorism. How can anybody support? Remember 20 years ago, it was the national policy. If you are never mind if you're either with us or against us, but if you provide support to a terrorist, you're a terrorist. Remember that?
Yeah, I mean
that was the whole axis of evil. It was the whole axis of evil argument.
Yeah, I mean it's still enshrined in Massachusetts law, right? Massachusetts law, we have the basically, if you are a person who is an accessory to a murder, you're a murderer.
Well, right, but I mean, I'm not talking about terrorism specifically, right? Like, it was the axis of evil because these people support terrorists. His name's Itamar Ben-Gvir. He is the Minister of National Security in Israel. He is convicted of supporting terrorism. And terrorists, it used to be a party in Israel. It's now illegal. It's called Koch. It was from a New York rabbi. I'm going to forget I'm going to boot his name now. Mir Kahane, who was a psychotic, genocidal maniac. And this Minister of National Security, that means he runs the police in Israel. How do you think that's working out for its Arab population right now? Not good.
Probably not great.
And since being in office, appeared at an event, wasn't supposed to be, I don't think he was supposed to be photographed there, but nonetheless appeared at an event and gave a speech in remembrance of both Mir Kahane, a terrorist, genocidal maniac, and Baruch Goldstein, who shot, I think 30 people and wounded 100 while they were praying, an Israeli. So, no, you don't have a problem with terrorism. You love terrorism. You just don't like it when your team, when the wrong color jersey, like it's a football game, loses.
And, I guess part of that,
reprehensible.
It's kind of how we were all raised and educated, is this concept that like there is good and evil. Like there's a good team and there's a bad team. And then because you're born here in America, you're on the good team, right? And then whoever is our friend, what we say is our friend, we're on the good team, even though those friends change depending on the time. It's funny, if you really, really think about it, Britain has been America's special friend, since the middle, in between World War I and World War II. But it wasn't that long before that we didn't really like them very much, right? So
we were pouring hot tar on those people. Literally pouring hot tar on them.
And then as an Irish guy growing up, it was very funny. I think I've told this story before, but my mom growing up hated the royal family. So like just absolutely hated them with a burning passion because she was Irish, and in her mind, the royal family represented the people who enslaved her people. That's how she felt, and it's really hard to argue with her because if you look at the history, it's pretty ugly. But anyways, when the royal family would be on TV, she would like shut the TV. I mean, this is how I grew up. She would turn the TV off. If they were on the cover of a magazine, she'd rip the magazine. It was nuts. And then when Queen Elizabeth died, my mom called me and was like, "Thank God." And it's like, whoa. But that's,
I mean, look,
just so you know,
look,
that's how folks feel when they feel that there's a person that's on the, like you said, the other team that has hurt them in some way.
Yep. And I mean, people like, oh, how did Sinn Féin in Ireland, or Hamas certainly fits into this category. Hezbollah is a little more complicated, but by and large, the FLN in Algeria, you can go on and on and on. When people are oppressing you, you're probably pretty likely to side with the people willing to fight back.
Yeah.
And you probably overlook a lot of nasty stuff that they do because they're willing to fight back for you.
I would say this, Tom, very interestingly enough, if you were to go back and read some of the correspondence between British generals and the King and King Henry during the Revolutionary War, you'd be interestingly to find that the American revolutionaries, who we laud as heroes of the war, were not considered to be a normal army. They were, they were considered to be terrorists, people who are not fighting fair, that were doing things outside the rules, and it wasn't fair. It's always interesting that the big time army, when they fight a little tiny group of people, will call that little tiny group of people bad, which is always interesting, and it's very consistent in the history of the world. That the big giant army fighting the little tiny army says the little tiny army is the bad guy. So,
and we didn't actually define terrorism as a legal term in the United States until after 9/11. The Reagan administration tried to do it, and they really gave up because everything that they ended up coming up with basically just said it's if they do it.
Yeah.
And they can't say that. And at one point, I don't know if this is still true, but at one point, different government agencies actually had different definitions. Like the Department of Homeland Security had a different definition than the CIA and the FBI. We throw around that word and it just means bad. Newsflash for you. Terrorism is part and parcel of warfare. Do you think shock and awe was about they only wanted to scare the Iraqi soldiers at the time? Or maybe they were trying to frighten the population into encouraging the government to quit, or turning on the government, or whatever.
When they're dropping napalm from the skies, that they were telling every person in those buildings beforehand to get out. You're crazy.
Yeah. Oh, you mean they drop flyers on them before they bomb them? Isn't that cute?
So I mean, I guess what's happening for me, Tom, is as I get older, more and more, I'm anti-war, I guess, and I recognize that I guess there has to be some kind of rules or some kind of way to approach each other in differences of opinion, but I don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't think that I should support anybody who believes in hurting people. And so that's really what it comes down to. I just don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't think it's right. And I really am finding more and more that life is precious. Even if you don't like the person, even if they pissed you off, even whatever, it's just, and maybe I'm feeling the weight of my own, my own life, that I haven't always done the right thing in my life. And I guess I want to live better. And I think that the way to do that is just to not hurt anybody. So yeah, I stand against murder. I guess that's controversial here in the city of Worcester. I'm for life, and I'm against murder.
Yeah. And, I love this argument that, I think Nico, in his defense, the city clerk, was just trying to give them another option. This isn't on him. He doesn't run the show. This is on council. He works for council. So this, shifting blame that's going on, or they're trying to parse out blame, equally amongst people or something to defer. I don't know what they're trying to do. It doesn't seem very politically competent to me, honestly. But this idea that, so they submitted their petition on time. They were told no. And then after the deadline, they were told, now there's no meeting this week and there's no meeting next week for elections. So we're now 3 weeks away. In that meeting, they could come back with a petition to ask council to suspend the rules, even though they already voted against that 5-6. And so these people that want to speak to this issue, you can come back next time and then maybe we'll let you talk, but probably not, because we've already voted on this.
Right. But also, if you wanted to not let people speak, one of the best tactics to do that is tell them come back next week, because then the emotion is gone, right? So then maybe there's less pressure and there's less like movement towards it, But at some point, these conversations, people are not going to give up. And I think this kind of segues into political accountability in the city of Worcester. Every political entity, whatever it is, whether it's a municipality or a state or a federal, whatever, eventually there's a tipping point of people, right? I mean, there's a great book called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. If you haven't read that, go check out that book. But basically what it is that organizations start to change and shift at this tipping point, and there's usually one person, there's one leader of some kind that starts to influence people in a way that really leads to radical change, right? And sometimes there's big swings in both directions before you get the settled thing. But there's definitely a feeling in the city government that you hear that they think that their way is the right way, and that they also believe that it probably won't change, right? They don't think that people will organize. And I saw that Tuesday. I want to say that I saw shock from some of local city officials. I don't want to point out anybody in particular, but they were blown away by the emotion. And they don't necessarily have any concept that they caused that they were directly responsible for how that happened. And instead, the response...
You could hear a pin drop in that room until they shut down the first speaker.
That's right. So that's the other thing too. This idea that there was screaming and yelling. No,
that's just not true.
After they shut down the first speaker, and
it was chaos.
A police officer escort her away from the microphone, which I have never seen before. Physically touched her. That's a first for me in the city of Worcester. By the way, there is no consequences, no civil or criminal consequences for being out of order in the city council chamber. You can yell and scream and lie and cheat, and there's really no way you could be held accountable. But that was the first time. And apparently, if you're a young girl who wants to speak about a tragedy, you can have a police officer touch you, and which is mind-boggling when you really truly think about it. And that happened, and then the emotions boiled over. That was the tipping point in that room, and you could hear it was actually interesting. If you want to look at the psychology of it, if you go listen to you can hear the audio on Manny's video. The people in the room were very hopeful that she was getting her chance to speak, and they believed in the mayor and they believed in the city council that they were going to get her a chance, and that they had shown through the protest that, hey, we can get to our city officials. We can convince them that our voices deserve to be heard. And the pain in their voices when they started saying, let her speak, and shame, it was pain that you heard. So they were hurt by the city officials. And so, I see that there's several city councilors watching right now that disagree with this. And I would say this to you is that I would ask you to review in your heart what you heard and what you saw, because I'm telling you that those people were hurt by you. You allowed hatred the week before, and then you wouldn't allow someone who was against murder the week following. It's your own fault. And then if there are greater political consequences that might come, next year at the municipal election, I'll remember everybody who voted to suspend those rules, and I will remember everybody who voted against it. I will never forget that. As the city, it's a defining moment for Worcester.
You know what I hope? I hope they come back. All 300 of them.
I do too. And I hope they show what they're about, which is they're for life. They are for life, man. That's what that group of people is for. They're for life. And our city needs more people like that care like that. We really do. We have a city that just kind of doesn't really care, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
well, so this is I never see who's watching. I don't know how you know this, but since there are consuls watching, let me offer my take at least. Not that you'll care. There's one thing you could do here. There's one thing. You have one option that allows you to not look like terrible people, and that is you just say, "Look, we made a mistake. We should have heard this. We heard." The other side, we heard a similar resolution a year ago that was much more detailed and didn't give any credence to the, I forget what it was, 3,000 or 4,000 people that had already been killed in Gaza by the time you voted that you didn't seem to care about at all. You can walk this back, hear the petition, vote. It's your choice how you vote, but vote. I'm not telling you how to vote. Just vote. If you want to say no, say no. If you think that, people not dying is somehow anti-Israeli, that's your own mental problems. But vote. And then change the rule so you're not trying to say that the rule is the same or the rules change, but the words are the same.
Right.
And that only happened when a girl in a hijab stepped to the mic, because that's what it looks like. And
who has experienced tremendous trauma. There's great value to hear that girl out, that young girl. She should be able to tell her story to us, to the people of Worcester. We should hear her story. Why can't we hear her story? Why are you denying her the right to just talk? You don't have to agree with her, but just let her talk.
And right. And then or this is the other option. Actually, there's two options. You can do that. You can do the humane thing and treat, the imam that was at City Council, the local imam, the same as you did two rabbis, one who doesn't even live in Worcester last year. If you want to leave that impression, if you want to leave that juxtaposition, that's up for you. But you shouldn't be, when you catch accusations, right or wrong, of bigotry, some form of bigotry, I just don't think you should cry after this, because this is the optics that you chose, that girl in hijab steps to the mic and you suddenly are too busy, not for trafficking and racist nonsense the week before, but the girl in the hijab's a step too far. If you want to leave those optics out there, that's fine.
And by the way,
but you need to. But the other thing you could do, is you bring up that nuclear thing from 2 years ago. You bring that up for reconsideration. You bring the October 17th last year back up for reconsideration. You bring up all the state house bills that you voted to support, because that is outside your purview if we're going to now strictly interpret the rule, and rescind those votes. Reconsider and rescind those votes. That's what you can do. If you want, if you want to leave the optics, and again, as I said at the beginning of this, I know many of you, some better than others, but I've at least met you all. I don't think you're bigots, but if you choose to leave these optics in place, that's on you. That's on you.
It is. I just, in the end, it really comes down to whether you believe in this idea of freedom of speech or not. If you really do, you really believe in that. It's always funny when you hear, people like say, "Well, I want to be heard, and I want to be this, and I want to be that," and then someone comes along that says everything different than them, and they're like, "But not that."
You're right.
But not that. No, I want everything else.
We want to be champions for our Jewish community, unless you say a thing we don't like, and then you're not a real Jew. You're one of them self-haters. Which is just a horrific anti-Semitic phrase that people like to use.
It's terrible. It really is. So I hope the city council really, really, really considers it. Because again, it's really easy to root for, if I bring up something related to cable license commissions, it's easy to get on that and to vote. Yeah, we want better treatment from the cable company. That's easy, and that's easy politically, right? That's not
Right.
that really that hard.
Well, that's why your petition wasn't allowed, because they didn't want to have to vote. It was either vote against charter and vote 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 against charter or vote against the city manager. Vote for charter. Yeah,
all those,
yeah, you know what I mean.
I do, and all those small things that have accumulated. Those things can be activated. This is how coalitions get built. By the way, the coalitions that you never saw coming. When all of a sudden someone shows up and gets voted in and has 20,000 votes, you're going to be blown away, because you're like, where did that person come from, right? They're not part of the establishment, and how dare they, and all this other stuff. But you did it, and there is a time in every system everywhere where things change. And so, Worcester, yes, has gone the same way pretty much for 40 or 50 years, with slight hiccups here and there. But it's pretty much been the same system, the same group of people, legacy behavior, legacy policy. But maybe it's time for a change, man. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful of that. I'm hopeful that next year we're going to see some political consequences from some of these really bad decisions and not thoughtful approaches to the people of Worcester. By the way, again, 1,500 at this point now, citizens of Worcester, residents of Worcester, voters of Worcester signed that petition.
And that's the crazy thing, is they went so above and beyond for this.
We haven't seen anything like that. When was the last time you seen a 1,500 person petition?
And they submitted, and I believe they submitted the petition before it was a week early. So maybe it was after the last meeting.
And then the city clerk's office waited till the last possible actually passed.
Which I actually think that's their process. Because I've seen other stuff get rejected. It all comes at the same time. Like when they do the agenda, they're doing it on that day, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of their process. They probably should do something differently, though.
Yeah.
You knew it was coming, and the petition had already been submitted before you even gave the orders to the clerk to when you told them basically we want to redefine the rule even though the words just stay the same. So okay, that's fine. I'm fine with that too. Like, I really don't think that they should be taking up stuff like this, but it's your precedent that you set.
I will say this though: the last 4 vote getters in the at-large races, if all 50, were separated by less than 1,500 votes. The bottom 4. Now the top 2 were a little bit higher, but if you look at the distance between the last vote getter at the at-large and the 4 in there, it's not that big of a spread. So if someone all of a sudden got 1,500 votes, they could jump right ahead of one of those people, right? So I don't know. I think Dominica finished, behind 2. If I'm right, it was Dominica was the next vote getter.
I forget if it was Guillermo and Dominica were 7, 8.
Yeah, they were pretty close, but I'm pretty sure that they were less than 1,000 total votes away from the person who whether it was 2. I think it was 2 was the last vote getter if I'm right. But
I think so.
But there was, I think the separation was less than 1,500 votes. Again, that could catapult someone onto the thing. And let's look at some of the district races. If just real quickly, just to keep it on Worcester, Councilor Hajiaj and Jose Rivera were separated by less than 200 votes. Councilor Pasillo and Dave, the guy from the Bravehearts, I always forget his last name.
Dave Peterson, great guy.
Dave Peterson. Less than 200 votes separated them. So there's again. Oh, and then in District 4, we had 2 councilors separated by less than 200 votes. Again, two candidates. So there's a voting block there, and I would hope people start to think about that. Like, what if that coalition was marshaled to vote in your race against you?
Yep. But
and you don't think that can happen?
And here's the thing: like, if they took that up and voted against it, do you think it would have been nearly that bad?
No, I think that what they did.
I think they would have been upset. But I think they would have went home.
But at least they would have went home, and they would have actually, if maybe even if they had let 3 or 4 people speak, it probably would have taken a lot of the energy out of the night, because then the pastors and the rabbis would have been like, well, we got our chance to speak, and like that kind of would have taken over, but it didn't, because they were denied. That's why you got what you got.
Yep.
So,
yep.
I don't even want to talk about the ballot questions now. It's too late, and I'm sad.
No. Yeah. Just real quick. Somebody asked me today. I have a petition that was held last week because I didn't want to be in the way of this stuff. And about a petition I put in about public records. My portion of the meeting will not be much watch TV.
Yes, it is. For me, it is.
I'm not going up there to swing at anybody. I'm going up there to present some facts and ask for the problem to be fixed that I've been experiencing. So, I will not be on the warpath that day. Sorry to disappoint somebody who reached out to me. And yeah, we'll do. Why don't we just do ballot questions next week? We'll just do a whole show of ballot questions.
Yeah. And then Tom's gonna next week from Monday. Tom's gonna be on the Manny J Media Election Eve special. So it's gonna be November 4th. We're gonna have a bunch of cool guests. It's gonna be a fun night. The night before the election. So you'll start hearing. There'll be some flyers, and all the guests will start getting announced throughout this week. November 4th, Leon. Monday, November 4th.
The first Tuesday of the month. Election
because November 5th is election day. And so if you haven't, by the way, early voting is going on right now. It goes till Friday, I believe. Early voting till Friday. And so, registration is over though. If you haven't registered, you can't register now.
Yeah. Registration was Friday, I think.
I think it was this past Friday. Now early voting. So, but if you are registered to vote, get out to vote. I will say this, that they have done some extensive training with us this year, some really specific training because of some nonsensical things that have happened. So, treat your poll workers well. I happen to be one. So be nice to me.
You don't have to treat him well, but treat the rest of them well.
Be nice to me when you see me. I give you a sticker, and the stickers are cool this year. So go check out the I voted stickers. There's some cool ones that won the contest. So it's going to be pretty cool this year.
Absolutely. So tune in next week for ballot question episode. Get in the chat, ask questions, and yell at us if we're getting it wrong.
That's right.
What is your novelty question of the week?
That's right. So everybody, for those of you who are listening for the first time or watching for the first time on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, blah 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 blah, all the places that Tom broadcasts, you will find that the best part of the show by far is when I asked Tom a question about him and his favorite things. And we've done food and snacks and dinosaurs. And last week we did Red Sox players, like best Red Sox players of all time. And so I thought maybe like keeping a sports theme would be like somewhat cool, because the Celtics, world champion Celtics, by the way, are back from their summer break. And I thought, what would be cool? Since we were talking about Larry Bird last week, I'm sure this is what's going to happen. I'm going to predict what's going to happen. Tom Marino, who is your favorite Boston Celtic of all time?
Ooh, I mean, I'm I have to go with Mr. Larry Joe Bird, but as like an icon of humanity, I mean, you cannot have this conversation and not mention Bill Russell.
So those are the easy ones, because I guess those are two of the greatest players of all time. I'm going to go completely not with one of the greatest players of all time.
All right, so supporting, we'll call it supporting cast.
Yeah, I want to pick my favorite, who made me the happiest when I saw him play Celtic of all time.
Okay.
And the person who made me happiest when I watching in my whole life is Antoine Walker.
Yes!
Employee number 8 was my favorite player of all time.
Listen,
and I used to love when he did the wiggle, and he was the guy bombing away from 3, and he shouldn't have been.
No.
He should not have been doing that.
It was like
20 years ago.
They were so bad. Then Paul was chucking threes like crazy, and when he was when they had put 2 people on him, then throw it to Antoine would shoot like 28, 25%. But no, every call. Antoine was my favorite. That was when they were so bad, you had to find something to like. Every call, he'd be he just always had this face on, what?
What? What?
It was the best.
Did
We used
this
to
every
die watching them.
So, by the way, there was a player on those teams. Those teams were so bad. They won like 15 games and like
they're
19
horrific.
games. They were so bad. There was a player, if anybody remembers this, named Brett Szabo. Do you remember Brett Szabo?
Yeah, he was a big, wasn't he? It was absolutely worthless.
And he used to wear a plastic mask over his face. Go look this dude up. He was so bad. He was the worst.
Yeah.
Of course, he was an NBA player, which means he's better than all of us. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
He's in the top, 1,200 players in the world, but he was garbage.
But he was an absolute garbage player. But I used to love it. And every once in a while, that team would win a game, right? And it would usually be Paul Pierce would go for 35. Antoine would go for 30, and then a guy like Brett Szabo would like dunk 5 times, and they would win a game. It was random.
And dunk he had like a 2-inch vertical, but he could reach.
He did. But I love those teams. Those teams are the best.
What I lost it. But yeah, I can't believe you said Antoine Walker. That's why I was like, all right, I got it now. It's Antoine Walker. I'm like, all right, I got it now.
Employee number 8 all the way. I did. And then Rick Pitino came and ruined it. Oh, Rick Pitino.
Oh God. Let's not talk about that. But there's a clip. And like they're like looking at him, and he's sitting next to Paul on the bench, and they're looking this way. And like you can see Antoine's mouth going, he's MFing. These MF is MF, he pauses for a second, he looks down, he was like, man, bleep them. And it's just so funny. Like, he was the funniest human being to observe.
He was so funny.
And he broke, by the way. You see that a couple years ago?
No, but I saw him on he was playing that in the 3-on-3 thing, the Ice Cube's 3-on-3 thing for a little while, but he's really gained a lot of weight. He's a big dude.
He's got that Charles Barkley thing, like he had to slim down from 300 to play,
Yeah. Oof. Boy, big guy, big kid.
That was a good one. Was a good one. Antoine Walker.
If you're out there listening, you can come on This Week in Worcester podcast, and we will regale you with tales from the late 90s, early 2000s Celtics. That team actually went to the playoffs a couple of years after that, too. They ended up
Paul
before they traded him. But anyways,
that was Paul. All right, but quick trivia on Celtics trivia. Who gave Paul Pierce his nickname?
The Truth? Oh, wasn't it at Kansas?
No.
Paul Westphal?
No.
Did I get it right? No, who is it?
Man, like I can't do his voice. Man, that Paul Pierce, man, he's the truth. It was Shaquille.
Oh,
his rookie year. It was rookie year. Paul Pierce went nuts on where he must have been in Orlando then. Maybe he was in LA already. But yeah, it must have been LA because PP went crazy on them, and that was what he said after the game. Man, that Paul Pierce, he's the truth. All right, kids. Next week we'll do ballot questions. We are 1 hour and 40 minutes. That is 40 minutes over the limit. We are grounded.
Yes, we are. We're in big trouble.
All right. We will try to screw it up less next week. This Week in Worcester out.